And it's on to the NFL wild card round. What's up, everybody? Good morning. Happy Monday, and welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Yeah, the wild card round. We still got college football to decide, NBA, college basketball starting to heat up, NHL, baseball right around the corner. This is your one-stop shop for all things sports betting. Let's take a look at how we did on the recap screen. Of course, that includes Sunday Night Football's primetime edition and Friday's show. We took some hits last night, like a lot of people did, but we still end up 9-7. Shout out to Buckets 2-0. Mike and Larry hit his. Chip hits his. Love to see it. Danny 1 for 2, and he hit that under 56.5 quite easily. All right, we move on from 9-7. It's been a good 2 weeks for us. Only a couple of losing recap screens, if that. Maybe just one that I can think of where we definitely took a hit on the recap screen. But we've been doing pretty well, and we're going to do even better with the stars of the show. We got Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and Mackenzie Brooks. We got to talk NFL just for starters. Larry, I'm going to start with you. Do we want to look back to Sunday, or do we want to look ahead to the wild card round? What jumps out at you on this Monday morning?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is Sam Darnold overthrowing 10 receivers or 10 different times. He overthrew his intended targets. He did have TJ Hawkinson wide open for 30 yards. He had Justin Jefferson, but that's a credit to Alex Anzalone and Aaron Glenn and that Lions defense. And at home, look how valuable it is to have home field throughout the playoffs, just what the Lions needed. So that was very impressive, but I don't think the Vikings are done or anything. I think they could bounce back in LA. Yeah, a lot of interesting opening lines. We're seeing early money come in on the Eagles against the Packers. I agree with that move. I think as long as Jalen Hurts is good to go, they should handle their business. And I know you like a certain team that could be close to your heart, the Washington Commanders.
It's interesting because a lot of lines are already trickling out. And Mike McKenzie, I'm going to get to you in just a second. Like, we already have some props on the board that I've taken a look at this morning. We've got some books that have first half bets out that I happen to like. That's a prelude to what you're about to hear from me. And some books don't have them. So this is a really good time to kind of figure out where you might get some value, because I think I have a pick where I think there's probably a point's worth of value on the pick I'm going to give out later today. But unfortunately, you can only find it at one major book. I'm going to give it out anyway because most people play at this major book. So, Mike, talk to me about yesterday, or talk to me about what you're looking at coming up, because we've got a lot of wild card games. The lines look pretty efficient to me.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the games that we saw, just all the teams that needed to win or really wanted to win, just how much of an adventure it was to get to the finish line there, whether it was the Commanders, the Packers ultimately coming up short, the Falcons game, and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Just absolute chaos across the board for a while. Like Green Bay Packers, for example, they had the opportunity. Obviously, Washington came back and won that game, but they had the opportunity to potentially avoid Philly, which was going to be a big thing for them. And then the other thing that I find fun to look at, looking ahead at the lines for wildcard weekend, you've got our Baltimore Ravens team that I think is clearly the best team in the NFL right now. And for me, and I think the market is making that statement as well. They're essentially going to be a double-digit favorite, a 10-point favorite against a division rival that they will be playing for the third time this season. Just pretty incredible to see that number all the way out to 10. But I can't say that I disagree with it. I don't think anyone wants to play the Baltimore Ravens at this point. And I think that was kind of evident by what the Chargers did, making sure that they got that matchup with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I mean, the Houston Texans were the belle of the ball, if you will. Everybody wanted to get their shot at playing them. Mackenzie, what I thought was so interesting yesterday was Washington sitting Jaden Daniels for the second half, knowing that if they lost that game, and it was a competitive game, they'd have to fly up to Philly and talk about a revenge game for Philly. I mean, I honestly think Philly would have absolutely destroyed Washington next week. I am so thankful that Washington ended up coming back in that game, thanks to, I can't believe I'm saying it, Marcus Mariota. Your reaction to yesterday and this Eagles line, your Eagles, like, I think it opened at maybe 3.5, 4. It's already up to 5.5 in a lot of places. Things looking pretty promising for Philly.
It's so funny just because as like an Eagles fan, and damage is the wrong word because they are historically a successful team, but like, I don't trust anything. Like even the Packers, I'm like, ooh, like, I don't know. It makes me feel better that clearly, sharp money and the public, people like the Eagles in the spot, and seeing this team go that way makes me feel better. I do think, we're in the right stride right now. I like that Jalen Hurts got to rest. I like that we're getting healthy. Big day for me yesterday with the Falcons going under their team total and missing the playoffs. That was basically my soapbox of the entire summer. So that would have been really awkward if that did not come through for me. So big day there. Vikings Lions. I know I jinxed it on our primetime show last night. I was like, what if this is just like an under ugly game? And you guys were like, shut up. There's no way. There's no way. Sure enough, last night was one of those nights where I lost the battle living with other 23-year-old girls and the Golden Globes were on. So I was like the iPad kid in the corner checking the score. But tough day for props, but we cashed the Lions -1.5.
Yeah, it was an interesting game. I thought we were going to see Minnesota adjust for the second half and maybe just get Sam Darnold some easier looks, but that just didn't happen. I thought it was a really bad coaching display from the Minnesota Vikings and, of course, from the players on the field as well. All right, let's get to some picks. We got so much more football to talk about this entire week. We're going to have our NFL shows and of course, the early edge. It's going to be a lot. So stay tuned for that. And, of course, if you're a member of SportsLine, you're going to get our picks as we put them out there. Mike, start us off with a Monday play.
College basketball. We're going to Jersey Mike's Arena here. I'm going Rutgers, though. Team total under. This number is currently floating around 77.5. And the first thing that I will say, when you get into this point of the season, you just have to have a lot go right to score 78 points in a college basketball game to begin with. But when I look at this matchup with Wisconsin, I think is clearly the better basketball team here overall, despite the road matchup. And what they do really well here is they play with a little bit slower tempo than Rutgers, and I think they will be able to dictate because they're going to have an edge rebounding the basketball. The one thing that Rutgers doesn't do well, Rutgers does not generate second chance opportunities, and Wisconsin has been awesome at limiting those. The other thing that I think is going to be a problem for Rutgers in this one, not a great free throw shooting team. 69%. That rate's about 250th in college basketball. I just give the edge to Wisconsin here. I think they're going to be able to dictate tempo. They're a great free throw shooting team. And if they're playing with the lead, that is going to be significant for me. And a little backing up, the SportsLine model actually has the team total even lower than I do. I played it again, 77.5. I've got the number at 73. SportsLine model has it all the way down to 71 here. So little synergy between those two. I'm going team total under 77.5. Again, takes a lot to go right in these kind of matchups to put 78 plus on the board.
All right. Under 77.5 team total for Rutgers. We got a couple of SportsLine picks before we get to my pick, Mackenzie's pick, and Larry's pick. We're going to start with the Magic and the Knicks, and it's an under 209.5. This one courtesy of Bruce Marshall. Again, Magic Knicks under 209.5 tonight. And then we're going to the Sabres. Money line is plus money, plus 130. Again, this one's from Bruce Marshall as well. The Sabres play the Caps, and the Caps are playing really, really good hockey. So listen, there's a reason why this is plus 130, but these are two SportsLine picks under 209.5. And again, Sabres money line plus 130. Speaking of plus money, you saw on the recap screen, I went 2 for 4. One of those plays was top Canadian Taylor Pendrith at plus 225. So we're not afraid to put up plus money plays there as well. The other 3 were just kind of normal minus 110-ish type bets. So again, keep that in mind. We're going to give you some plus money plays as well. And that may include some plays coming up on this show from Mackenzie, from Larry, from myself. We're going to hear about all of them after this break.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
We are back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Mackenzie Brooks, you got a couple of picks tonight. Talk to me.
Yeah, you know me. We're going all over the board, but we're starting with the game of the year. The FCS Championship is tonight. So we're finally getting a football game that's not the FBS playoff where people are actually playing and trying, and we're not dealing with the transfer portal. So we're going to go to Montana State here. They are playing North Dakota State. And we're going Ty McCullough, which is A, an awesome name, B, over 26.5 receiving yards. Now, he put up 92 on the same exact team last year in the playoffs, so that definitely makes me feel good. 7-3 to this over in his last 10 games as well. So again, do I know a million things about this guy? No. Does it feel like it's an overlooked market right now with so many other things going on that I just don't think odds makers are giving it the time of day? That's probably where we stand. So again, 7-3 this over in his last 10. Obviously, the championship game, you go to your guys, and I think this is a good spot for him. And then we're going to a little prop in the NBA, going back to that Knicks-Orlando game, going with Cole Anthony over 25.5 PRA. Now, this is a volume play. There's a ton of other guards that are dealing with injuries, so he should get 30-plus minutes the way he has the last 2 games. Now, he has not hit this PRA in the last 2 games, but the volume's there. He's had 11-plus field goal attempts in his last 4. When you just look at him with 29-plus minutes over the last 2 seasons, he's 13-6 to this number. So even if this is a Knicks blowout, he's the kind of guy that will stay in for the garbage time points as well. So feels like regardless of the game script, we should see a ton of Anthony tonight, and we should be able to hit this.
These are some funny comments. There's like Doug Horner says, LOL player props on an FCS game.
You know me.
But here's the thing. I mean, she nailed it, because this is where you're probably, even though this is an isolated game, this is where you're probably going to find softer markets. And that's what we're always trying to look for. There's Jeff Stewart is very happy about this pick. He says, finally, thank you, Ken's go Bison. We've got some picks too. Vincent Calabrese says Inter Milan money line. Plus over 1.5 at plus 120. A lot of picks in here. Tailored Winning says Pacers team total over 114.5. Put your picks in the chat if you have any. I've got a pick coming up, and I do want to go around the horn to see if anybody is eyeing a line for the wild card round. The line that I'm eyeing, that right now, this will be probably available later today everywhere. This is right now only available at DK. Commanders first half. We know the line on this game is 3.5 right now, pretty much universally. At DK, you can get Commanders first half plus 3.5. And again, the same line, the full game line, you can get as the first half line. Commanders plus 3.5 at minus 122. Again, this will probably be at other books, but I'm guessing will be plus 3 when it opens. Again, the first half play. I still like it at plus 3. I like the push value there. I just think this is too many points. We've seen, 2 things about the Saints. One is, not the Saints. The Saints are who played the Bucs and actually challenged them and almost beat them yesterday. The Bucs on the back end are pretty banged up. We'll see who they get back for this Washington game, but they may have some injuries in the secondary. Now, Washington has injuries of their own. I don't know if Marshawn Lattimore is actually going to finally suit up. But, I mean, he suited up once and then kind of re-injured himself. So there are going to be issues for Washington too, but this is going to be a back-and-forth game with both teams being able to score. And I honestly think the full game line is a little much at 3.5, but I certainly think the first half line at 3.5 is a little much as well. Washington, sometime prone to getting off to slow starts, but certainly the Bucs as well. And for the record, the Bucs haven't played a lot of great quarterbacks lately. Jaden Daniels is certainly a great quarterback. So give me Commanders first half plus 3.5. Larry, before we get to your college basketball pick, was there a line that you looked at that and maybe the answer is no. Was there a line that you looked at for the wild card round and you said to yourself, hey, this looks like value. I'm surprised this line is what it is?
Yeah, surprised the Eagles opened as low as they did, given Jordan Love was dealing with some kind of an injury. He's going to play, obviously, but Christian Watson being out is massive, the way he affects the rest of that offense. And Jordan Love has really struggled against man coverage this year, 30th in EPA against man coverage. And the Eagles, with their cornerbacks, are able to do that. So I think it's a bad matchup for Green Bay all around. And you're seeing the line really reflected as this has gone from 3.5 all the way up to 5.5, but still below 6. I would still lean Philly.
Mackenzie, I want to ask you, Rick Funcannon had a question about, and I want to ask you the same question, but he had a specific question about the Chargers and the Texans game. That was the first game I looked at because I wanted to pick on the Texans. But then again, I didn't want to pick on the Texans with the Chargers necessarily. The line is -3. It looks like it could dip down to 2.5. But Rick's question for everybody was, do we take this at 3 now if we like the Chargers? Or do we think this is going down to 2.5? Does the model, maybe it's too early to tell, does the model tell us anything about whether there's value on this line?
We make it a 1-point game. So if you like the Houston side, I would say get the Houston side while you can at a field goal. Honestly, too early for me to tell you where that money's going to go. I mean, it's just hard to tell. You know, you get sharp money, then you get public money, and it's deciphering that through the week that becomes the problem. So I'd say too early. I mean, the model likes the Texans to cover, not win outright. So I think the +3 is probably the time to get it.
Mike, any lines that jumped out to you before we hit Larry's pick?
I thought the Vikings being -2 was a little soft. I had that number up a little closer to 3.5 personally. I know that the Rams have a little rest advantage, get to play at home, but again, it's basically the Vikings baseline, right? They get to play in a dome again. LA definitely not the best home field advantage in general. So for me, I thought that line was a little soft. And looking at the Rams, I know Blake Corum didn't play a massive role, but it is extra depth. Broke his arm in that game this weekend playing. So for me, I think a bounce back performance coming from Sam Darnold and the Vikings. I would have made that line again 3 or 3.5.
Do we think we're seeing, I think it opened at 2, it's down to 1.5 in a lot of places. Do we think we're seeing perhaps some overreaction to what we saw last night? And if let's say Minnesota was extremely competitive and lost at the end, maybe this is 2.5, or am I overstating it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and there was I think there's definitely an overreaction. There is some accounting for rest. Obviously, the Rams basically got a bye week because they did rest essentially everyone important there.
All right. Let's turn back. Oh, by the way, there's an early wedge question from Dano. Dano, I will get back to you on early wedge and golf content. I will say we went 2-0 on our matchups last week. And of course, we missed the nationality play. But again, that was plus 225. So a pretty good first week. No outrights, no first round leaders. But we march on to the Sony. So I'll have some picks on this show for the Sony. As far as the early wedge, we will get back to you on that. Larry, we've got one pick left, and it's left for you. You are also going to college basketball.
Yeah, I'm going to college basketball, and I'm going to do what everyone is doing right now, and that is fading the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Sorry, because I know we've got a couple of very loyal Golden Gophers fans in the chat, but they know better than anyone. This team can't compete right now in the new NIL era. I mean, that's what this program is suffering through. They lose Pharrell Payne. They lose Elijah Hawkins. Those guys making $30,000, $40,000 a month at their new schools in Texas that the Minnesota could not match. And that's why they've lost so many key guys. You have an Ohio State team coming in here off a loss, which I like. This is a team with a high ceiling that's already beaten Kentucky. Bruce Thornton should bounce back. He did not have a good game the other night in that home loss. If the travel is simple, with the weather and they can get there fine, I really love Ohio State. I will play this up to 5.5. I wouldn't play it higher than that. Minnesota last in shooting in the Big Ten, second to last in 3-point percentage, last in margin. I mean, they're just really in a bad spot. They're Ohio State, all these teams, they cannot compete right now in terms of the NIL dollars. And Ben Johnson is definitely on the hot seat.
Go ahead, Mike.
I would say, play that one now, because I bet that line closes at 8 today. I think it's going to just one-way traffic. I got the number all the way up to 9.5 here on my model.
Wow.
So I like Ohio State quite a bit, and Larry's dead on there. This line's going to balloon. I think it's, again, 7 or 8.
The one thing that's interesting about Minnesota is they were a covering machine last year. They were 25-9 against the spread. They had a knack when they were dogs of losing by 3 instead of 5 or 6. But this year they've only covered one game. They're 1-11-2 against the number. Of course, the odds makers know that, and bettors know that, and that's why, like Mike said, this is only going to go one way.
All right. Speaking of bettors, Jeff Stewart says he likes Montana State to cover -3 in that FCS championship game. Tyler Hero, 25+ points at +110, says Big Cheesy. Mackenzie, was there anything in the chat that, because I know you're very good at following up with the chat, anything that stuck out to you?
Not necessarily. Not a lot of questions today. The SportsLine model also makes this Ohio State victory a 9-win victory, at 9-point victory would be the correct way to say that as well. So makes too much sense, guys. This might be a lock.
Here we go. Larry, let me ask you this, because Brad Betts Footy wants to know, how high would you play Ohio State?
I mean, 5.5 was as high as I was prepared to go when I looked at this. And like people are saying, you can still get 5.5s out there.
Okay. And Mike, one last question on that game. Does your model speak to the under at all? Because Tyler Liebel says the total looks like it's 130. Thoughts on the under?
136.5 is what the market is showing. 135.9, so no.
Okay.
But it does, with my spread at 9.5, it does have an under on Minnesota's team total at 65.5 or 66.5.
All right. And Mr. Big says he played it last night at 4.5. Sounds like Mr. Big is a SportsLine member. That's when you get the best lines. If you're a SportsLine member, you get our picks when we make them. And if you want to make these picks, by the way, don't forget, new BetMGM customers can sign up today and get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10, and you'll receive up to $1,500 if your bet loses with bonus code EDGE. That's bonus code EDGE, EDGE. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what a great show. We had college football. We had a lot of NFL wildcard talk. We're going to be talking a lot more college football later in the week. I mentioned Sony Open picks, a lot to cover. But here's the recap screen from today. Commanders first half plus 3.5. That, of course, is next Sunday night. But I want to grab this first half line while I can. Check your book for when this line comes out. It's out in a couple of places. Mike McClure, Rutgers, team total under 77.5 versus Wisconsin. Larry Hartstein, Ohio State, minus 4.5 versus Minnesota. He said he'd play it up to 5.5. Mackenzie Brooks, Cole Anthony, over 25.5. PRA, points, rebounds, and assists. And Ty McCullough from Montana State, over 26.5. Receiving yards at minus 144. 2 sports line picks. The Sabres going against the Caps. Sabres money line plus 130. And the Magic and the Knicks under 209.5. Great show, everybody. Great Monday. A lot to come this week. Very excited about where we're headed on the early edge with so many sports colliding at the very same time. Big thank you to everybody in the chat. Big Cheesy, Reed Phillips, Jeff Stewart, Mike, Joe Neuenfeld, Dano, Mr. Big. Thank you for being in here. Fernando, thank you for being in here, everybody. Thanks for hitting the like button. Thanks for being a part of this process every single morning at 10. On behalf of Mackenzie Brooks, Debo on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, and also a new producer you're going to hear a lot about. And of course, Mike McClure and Larry Hartstein. I'm the Counselor of Cash. This is the Early Edge. We rest our case.